Well, greetings friends and welcome back. Today we're looking at the F63 Condor, the Federal Fighter. Before we jump in, if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button. That much of an effort for you, and it makes a huge amount of difference for me. Let's jump in. So jumping straight into this where you would normally find yourself, we're going to step out of the spot and say hello to Commander Headless, who, as you've seen previously with my other fighter video, and if you've watched the teleprojection video, you're not actually in here. Luckily, there aren't actually any grab handles in here for me to complain about, so yay for both of us. Alright, so to give you the sense of scale for this one, I'm going to trace out the canopy and then the interior with my hand, so you'll actually be able to see it in real space in my room. So follow along. So the canopy starts up here, pretty much at these 2 points, and I'll trace the top ridges coming down first. So they come to here, is that first crossbar, and then the canopy keeps coming down to the front, and it ends right about there. If we were to go back and look at the side panels here, so this diagonal panel that's sitting next to your shoulder, and this one here, so if we slide along those to there, then they change into the horizontal or near horizontal aspect of the dash. Then the projection sort of sits here, and then the emitter for the projection sits much further beyond there, and then that keeps going here until we get to this, which looks like a reversed bonnet scoop. That sort of sits there towards the front again. So that gives you the vague idea of how long the cockpit actually is. This area here where the commander's feet sit, so if you imagine here is where the two commander's feet are sitting, and then this area starts here and goes in there in towards the end and ends around about there, sort of up on an angle, and the dashboard sort of sits here. So that gives you the real life sort of counterpart of what this thing looks like, and very much so the feel in here is that of a fighter jet. Besides the size and shape, we have these 3 switches, which say locked, oxy, and mag. Not sure what they are supposed to be. A tiny little display there that says AP. Almost impossible to read in real life. It's only because I'm shoving my eye directly into it. And this little light or indicator about a size of a small coin. And the dash, which is comprised of this composite sort of carbon fiber material with brushed aluminium inlays. This thing that looks like a miniature eye of Sauron. Presumably that's a projector of some description or an indicator, or it's a thing. The holographic projection in the middle is the size of a large dinner plate, a very large dinner plate I would say. And down here we have a Core Dynamics logo, again on the brushed aluminium, and a couple of little dents in there, but that's about it. And the back of the console is not actually textured, nor should it be really. Continuing down here, we have a few more little inlays. Well, basically it just looks like a sports car like the rest of them. And then just this plain black-grey sort of plastic at the front, fairly low texture, before this weird sort of bonnet scoop situation. I'm not exactly sure what that's supposed to represent, because maybe it's a fan, but again, you don't need to breathe because you're not actually in here. Now if we start sticking our head through the window, you can see here is some sort of a serial number that you can pause and read for yourself if you're that excited. And you can see through to the rear of the ship and down. So you can see down there are 3 sort of handles. They're about 1.5 feet to maybe 2 feet apart, and definitely human handhold sized. And coming through to the front, I'm going to run into something in a minute, I'm sure, but we can see the edge of the front, which is nicely frayed and bits of paint missing and stuff, which is good for a fighter because that's what you'd expect. And you see that on all of the corners around here as well, with paint chips and things, which gives you a nice feel. Repeat on the other side of the same serial number, heading backwards, and the same grips. And there's a bit of an interior here, looks like. No, it's just a piece of glass really that's seeming to show some of the interior through, but I don't think it's glass. No, it's not meant to be. Okay, so it's just sort of glitching out through the back, but that's okay. We'll forgive them. You're not supposed to be out here. Again, more paint chips over here. Here are these grab handles, which I think I can get closer to. Yep, so there's one, there's the other, and down there would be the third. You probably couldn't see me reaching through those. We have this valley kind of situation here between the main wing and the canopy of the cockpit, and it very much has a sort of fighter jet kind of aspect to it and rake down towards the front, which looks pretty cool. Behind here we start to see some low texture glitches, again probably because we're in first person mode. And behind the seat you can see, well, the seat, it butts immediately onto this wall. There's a latch here, and it seems like there's a section here which could potentially open, but again, it's not for the commander to get into, it's more just for maintenance. And down the bottom here we have nothing much other than a bit of texturing, and directly under the commander's legs we have this section which may or may not be openable. I can't see why, maybe to maintain the guns or something, not sure. I haven't actually reset my vision for this entire video as yet, so this whole space you can see is walkable certainly, and you can view everything from one perspective. Now there is no door, but if we shove our head through the back here, you can see a bit of the interior of the ship. There's the utility mount down there that says "Danger, stay clear" on the back of it there, not sure if you can see that. And then the extent of the ship, which extends not quite the same distance as to the front, but maybe another 3 meters to the very back of those engines. And that's about it. Nothing else happening at this end. Now there is one unfortunate thing that bothered me about this particular fighter ever since I first had a go in it, and that is the guns. So if I show you those, you can see underneath that they are not textured in any way, shape or form, which is a bit of a shame. And I thought that this was only in VR, but in 2D, if you fly under this ship and you have a look at it, it's present there as well. But you can see them, they're firing, and you can see that it is in fact the guns, and that they are just unfortunately not textured and they don't move in any way, shape or form, whether you're firing them or not. And it seems to just be these particular guns, which are the gimbaled beams, that have this issue. I think the other weapons are reasonably well detailed. So underneath we have what maybe was some sort of insignia, but it's so low res it's not even funny. So here's another view that you don't really ever get to see, which is right from the ship lights and where those guns are down the bottom. We get to see how thin the wings actually are, so they're probably only about a foot in width. And down underneath here we have some nice greebling, some piping that leads from the sides of the wings to the rear. And yeah, again, unfortunately these extremely untextured guns sort of take away from the whole experience. Otherwise the rest of this underside looks pretty proper and cool. And just for fun, while we're under here, let's launch one of our heat sinks out. And there it goes. And I really like this fighter, because even though it's not my actual favorite because of functionality, but I quite like it in terms of how it looks. Sort of reminds me of a Batwing or something, which is kind of pretty cool, you know? And here we have a little bit more proof that the two models, the first person model and the outside model, are two different models. So it's not in fact the commander that goes headless and head full, the entire model reloads. So here's a bit more proof. Have a look at the lights just on the outside of the cockpit there, the red lights. And if we head back into this view, you can see that if I head over here, there are actually no red lights on the outside where there in fact should be, nor is there that red piping along the outside of the wings. I mean, the line for it is there, but it's not lit up. So again, there's a bit more proof there that you can see the interior views and the exterior views are two different models. Probably no other video shows it better than the Clipper one, which I'll link above, that you can watch after this video, which is horrendously bad in the way it models the outside of the ship from first person mode. See if we can see in the fighter bay by going into the fighter bay but upside down. Oh, this is nauseating. Won't let us go any further than that. So just to try and explain to you what I've done, so I'm underneath the Condor. The Condor is upside down on the underside of the ship because I wanted to show you a bit more down into the fighter bay, which we haven't really been able to look into properly quite as yet. No, it goes black. I can't get down that low. Is that as far as it's going to let us go? Oh, man. All right, well, from here, you'll have to... I'll tell you what, I'll do you a favor. I'll flip the screen upside down so it's a bit easier for you to see. So looking up into the fighter bay, You can see that crane over there, a yellow one, that looks like it attaches to the fighter and probably does some maintenance on it or something. You can see those two doors down the bottom of the fighter bay, and as I said previously, it's probably about 2 stories in terms of height, of how high that fighter bay actually is. A couple of yellow lights flashing on and off and a bit of greebling on the wall, but other than that, there's not a huge amount else to see. You can also see the roof of the fighter bay there has got lots of pipes running up and down it, and that's about it for there. A couple of vents and fans on the side. And if we look down at the landing pad there, or up in my case, you can see there's a flashing sort of white cross there into the middle, which presumably is where the fighter in fact stops once it finally does get in there. Bit of a mesh floor that you can see some piping and stuff through by the looks of things, which is kind of interesting. And those struts over there, which are very hefty, they're probably, I don't know, 3 meters across, I would say, and about 1.5 meters in terms of thickness, and they clamp. You can see their sort of arms are clamped around the base of the docking bay. Pretty awesome. I don't think you really get to appreciate how much effort has gone into detailing this thing, because you only ever see it for a split second, as you're either getting shot out of it at 1,000,000 miles an hour or coming in, at which point it's underneath you anyway, so you don't really get to see it that well from that perspective either. And in terms of the 2 tines that are coming out, well, they are very long. I would say they're probably 25 to 30 meters in length, something in that order. Let's see if we can get closer to them. Yeah, I would say probably a good 20 meters long. And I like the flashing lights as they come down towards the front to indicate the docking sequence. So that's really cool. I enjoy that. What's also kind of incongruous is that the flashing HUD display is actually physical, and I know that because anything that's a HUD display would only register if there was a window in the way, whereas here clearly there is no window. I know it's being pedantic, but it's just interesting to note that it is a physical, probably see-through thing that is flashing in midair, and it won't let me get close to it, or it won't render all the way down into my face, so I can't give you a closer view. Alright, that'll about do it. I'm going to roll over now before I throw up. I really wish we could jank ourselves further into that fighter bay to see more, but no, unfortunately, that's as far as I can actually get. But interestingly, these landing tines or struts are actually not a physical object, so you can see that the ship is flying through them. So we can actually see that they're like an I-beam configuration with holes in the middle, with some cross members there. Yeah, again, something that you never really get to appreciate how much time and effort has gone into rendering these. And these lights on the top, I think they actually disappear when they're not lit. Yeah, they do. So they're just an sort of projected LED, as if there were lights there coming in towards you, but they aren't actually physically there, which is kind of cool. That'll do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed that quick look at the F63 Condor, the Federal fighter, and a bit of a janky look at the fighter bay as well, which is always a bit of fun when you can get in places where you're not supposed to go. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit the button. It's that much effort for you, and it means the world to me. YouTube doesn't really pay attention to videos until you've got a certain number of subscribers, so I'm barreling towards that, and I really appreciate if you can help me out. So thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Fly safe, Commanders.